the Digital Babble with your host, Flipper. Colorful commentary on your photography. Seen on fingerlakes1.com.
Hey everybody, it's the Digital Babble here with me, Flipper, right here on fingerlakes1.tv and fingerlakes1.com. Be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can like us and share us. Go check us out on Facebook. Facebook's always a great place to post your comments or talk about what we're talking about. And, get any comments you want out there. I love questions. I love answering questions. And this is the Digital Babble, and this is a show about photography and about Photoshop. So that's what I do here. And if I hope you enjoy it. 1, 2, I hope you go check out our website and go check out all the stuff that we got on our website. And I keep adding to it. I'm slowly getting there. And our website is at tdbny.com. And you can go check out some of Jakey's writings. You know, Jakey seems to be getting on my computer and writing a lot of different things lately. So, and if you don't know who Jakey is, go check out the website. Make sure to like us and share us. Share us with your favorite photography friend. Sometimes we have some great tips and hints that you might not have thought of. One of the things that Jakey was bringing up this last week was shooting blinds. Also, some photographers shoot blind to try to capture those candid moments that you're trying to capture at like a wedding or at an event. And those candid moments sometimes come out a lot better when you're shooting blind. In other words, you're just pulling the camera up and you're not really looking at what you're supposed to be doing and you fire away. Go check out that article. I think Jakey did a pretty good job for being a cat, using just his paws and while I was down here working on stuff last week. So go check that out. So this week's show is all about light and light metering. The question came up in a conversation recently was about how do cameras know what the exposure is? And we kind of went over that. And if you go previous shows that I've done or some of the future shows I'm sure I'm going to do, you'll hear a common theme that the camera thinks. So, and you got to think like the camera. Well, in order to think like the camera, we got to think like the light meter that it uses to calculate that exposure. So that light meter is built into a lot of cameras, like your SLRs, your point and shoots. They're all built in with a light meter. And the basis of a light meter is that it wants to tell you what the proper exposure is for something that's in front of the lens or in front of the meter that is 18% gray. Okay, if you're using that as a reference point. So 18% gray is what the light meter sees. So if you aim your camera at something pure white and it thinks it's 18% gray, your whites are going to come out muddy and darker and not white. So keep that in mind. If you point it to something black, it's going to make it a lot lighter than what it was. So the blacks will turn into like this kind of mid-tone gray color. So it always tries to push one way or the other to get to 18% gray. So that's where this show's all about. We're going to be talking about light and how to properly meter for a scene. So getting right into this, we understand right now what we've talked about so far is the fact that the light meter sees 18% gray. This is a wonderful thing to know because now we can start thinking actually like the camera. So when I look at something and I look off into the distance, or you're looking at me here on screen, I'm going to look down and look at me in the screen. What do I have right here, right now, that's 18% gray that the camera could meter off of me? Well, you could try to shoot for my eyes and meter off my eyes, and it'll make the whites of my eyes a little bit darker, more gray. I got a couple things in the background here. I've got the door behind me. That's actually white, but you could also, there's not enough light there, so you could meter that as 18% gray. You could also look for other items, such as if you're out in the woods. If you're out in the woods and you've just got just standard foliage, green foliage just scattered all over, you could meter off the foliage as well. And then what that does is it gives you the ability to say, okay, that's not 18% gray, but I know if I meter off of that and then do exposure compensation by 1.5 stops, it'll get me to that 18% gray. So that's how we have to think. We have to think everything that the meter sees is 18% gray. That way, when we look at a scene and we figure out how it's metering it, we can actually compensate or kind of figure out where the exposure is supposed to be. So what does a light meter do? First off, let's go over to the board here, and we're going to pull up a standard point and shoot, the one that I use probably every other show. Now, the light meter in this is built in, so whatever the camera sees in front of it is what it's going to meter. Most of these point and shoots are evaluative metering, so it's going to actually take and look at the whole scene, pretend it's 18% gray, and average it out, and that's the meter reading you're going to get for your exposure. A lot of people say that's good. Some people are like, that's not good. It just depends on what camp you're from. The big thing here is to realize and understand that 18% gray in front of the camera probably never happens, and it's very rare. The world just is not made up of 18% gray. So 18% gray gives you a good average, though, and it gives you a good starting point, and that's how the meters kind of work. It gets you to a point where you can start with something. So in a point and shoot, it's going to figure it out and say, well, that object in front of me is 18% gray. How does that look, Mr. Photographer or Miss Photographer? And you look at it and go, that's not too good. So then you can use your exposure compensation and go higher or lower. Okay, so that's a way that you can work with your point and shoot, is using exposure compensation or modifying your settings manually and get a little brighter, a little darker, depending on what you're aiming the camera at. So how does this light meter respond, or what does a light meter do for a camera? Okay, so anything in front of us 18% gray. It then returns to the microprocessor in the camera. I know I'm going to get techie for a minute here. It's going to return to the microprocessor, which is controlling how the functions of the camera work, the exact settings. So it's going to figure out your shutter speed, it's going to figure out your aperture, and your ISO, most likely if you're on full auto. If you've already set your ISO, then it figures out the aperture and shutter speed accordingly, and those are your settings, and that's how it derives the settings. So that's how your camera thinks. Now, once you've got that down, and you say, okay, fine, I understand the camera's thinking like that. Okay, Flipper, what are you going to do with this? What's the next step? How do I make these really fancy high contrast shots, or I want to get a silhouette of somebody in the sunlight, or something like that? You got to think like the camera. So whatever the camera's aimed at is going to be 18% gray. This is going to be a continual theme today, so bear with me. I'm going to probably mention it a million times. So you got somebody standing against a backdrop or a sunset. Okay, you want them to be black, so you wouldn't meter off of them, because if you meter off of them, they're going to become 18% gray. It's going to try to properly expose them. What you want to meter off of is the bright sunlight in the background. That way they go totally dark and the sunset's just looking brilliant, and that's properly exposed. So that's a good way to meter a silhouette situation when you have the light behind the subject or a scene behind the subject that's very bright and you want the subject to go dark. So that's kind of a neat thing. And now I'm going to get into a few more scenes here in a minute, but let me just keep going based on what a light meter is. So let me find a good light meter here. Whoops, that's the camera. Okay. So to understand light metering, we'll come back to this diagram in just a second, but there's two ways of metering. Okay, well, there's really three, but we'll only discuss two right this second. There's reflective and incident. Okay, and when we take a reading on the reflective side, it's reading the amount of light that's reflected off the subject back into the camera. When we do the incident side, then we're reading what light is falling on the subject. So there's two different ways to meter. Now, all cameras, every single camera, is always metering on the reflective side. So whenever you point your camera at something and you say, okay, well, I gotta take a good picture of this bride sitting over here, and you pull up your camera, you pull it halfway, and it takes the meter reading, it is doing the reflective reading, and it's just saying what light is bouncing off that person. And that's the settings I'm going to use. Is this good or bad? I'm really indifferent, really, about it, because There's no really, it's just a way to meter, and cameras do a pretty good job of metering this way. Now, for all you smartphone people out there, because I know a lot of smartphone people like to take photos with their phones or their iPads or whatever, your iPad and smartphones work the same way. The only difference is that you have a lot more limited functionality, and your resolution's probably a little less than what I'm working with, possibly a little less than your typical average SLR person would have. So, keeping that in mind when it's meter reading, it's doing the same evaluative. It's still looking at the 18% gray. So what you can do with your iPad, your iPhone, your Android phone is to trick it into thinking that something's lighter or darker by first aiming it at something lighter or darker than your subject. Pushing the button there should be a button on your app or your phone to hold the exposure, recompose, so you turn it right back to the person, and then finish firing the shot. And that's how you can do it with point and shoot cameras as well. You would aim at whatever you're trying to meter off of, so whatever you're trying to get the exposure for, meter off of that, hold the exposure or exposure lock button, moved and recompose the shot so that you got the subject where you want them, and then fire away. You can also do this with manual settings. Once you get your automatic settings, you can then look at the camera and go, okay, that was my automatic settings. I'll set it to manual and I'll make my own settings. And you can manually do the setting changes to be 18% gray, higher, lower, whatever. So that's your internal camera meter, okay? There's another meter, which some photographers tend to use. I know a lot of amateurs that use this, and they go get a standard light meter that you can buy. It's an external light meter. It's a handheld device, which is, whoops, that's not it. Here's a mechanical one. You would set your ISO with the dial, and then it would read the f-stop and shutter speed down on that guide there. And that would then tell you what your camera settings should be for the exposure that it's either reading for off the reflective, or if you're reading it as incident. So that being said, let me get a little more comfortable here. So that being said, incident, which is light coming into the, falling on the scene. Reflective, which is what's bounced off. Okay, so physics 101. Think of a mirror. Light comes in, hits the mirror, and then bounces off, or a laser. Okay, ambient or the incident reading is always the light before it hits a surface. Reflective is always the reflection on the mirror, and that just depends on where you want to meter. If you meter on the reflective side, typically speaking, there's some adjustments to be made because you'll get bright spots. Like my forehead in this show, you'll notice that I get, especially now that I'm glistening. Oh my God, it's hot down here. You got this light above me that's illuminating me, and I've got this hot spot here. Well, because I'm a little sweaty, it's acting more like a mirror, so it becomes a very defined hot spot. So if we meter off that hot spot, that's the reflective side. It's probably going to be a less of a meter reading and less accurate of a meter reading than using an ambient or an incident reading. Now, how to take an incident reading? You get one of these external light meters, and I'll grab one more. Whoops, that's the wrong one. There's one more here. I just got to find it. Camera light metering modes. Mechanical with your hand. Let's see this right here. There we go. There's a digital one. So here's a Seaconic digital light meter. It does incident, spot, which I didn't go over, but spot metering basically is there's a little pinpoint that you want to meter off of, so you know exactly what you're pointing the meter at to get the reading on. And that's what spot metering is. It takes a very small area. So saying if I wanted to meter just this little reflective spot on my forehead, that would be a spot meter. It's very, very tiny. That's all I want to get the metering on, instead of evaluative, which is over the whole frame. So those are your three: incident, reflective, and then of course spot is also reflective, but usually we separate that out because instead of seeing the scene, it's seeing just a little tiny area. So You get one of these handheld meters. You can buy them fairly cheap. You can get one for $75 from B&H Photo Video or Adorama or your favorite camera place. If you're like here in Seneca Falls, you got the Village Camera Shop here over on, what is it, 5 and 20. So, or Main Street between Seneca Falls and Waterloo. Great place. He has a lot of toys, a lot of older equipment as well as a lot of newer equipment. Go get yourself a cheap little light meter, whether it's mechanical or digital. Learn how to use it. Learn how to take incident readings, which is really simple. You take this meter and you hold it with the dome facing outward, so the dome becomes your subject, and you kind of aim it back towards your camera, okay? And then by aiming it back towards the camera, it'll take and average out the light that's hitting the subject accordingly, and you pull the trigger. It'll then tell you what the light meter reading is for the incident light. This tells you how much light is in the scene. So this way you would set your camera to that exposure, and then everything would look fairly close to being lit or exposed properly for the amount of light hitting your subject. So those are the two ways: reflective metering, which a lot of cameras do, or an external meter can do incident, reflective, and spot metering. Let's see, where do we want to go with this? Metering modes. In your camera, you got several different types of metering modes: evaluative, partial, and spot, and center weighted average. I can go over these real quick, and I'll just kind of buzz through them, but I'll probably do another show just on camera metering because these get a little weird. Evaluative takes the entire scene and all its different elements, so it does the partial, the spot, the center weighted, combines them together and gives the camera what it thinks is the best 18% average, 18% gray average exposure. Works pretty good. Usually, especially if you got one of the newer cameras, like, you know, a Canon 60D or, you know, a Nikon D80 or whatever the next one up is, or D800. They're really good. But really the thing is that, you know, the scene can kind of trick the camera into thinking something it really shouldn't. So, like saying if you got like a little tiny, really hot, bright light in the scene, the evaluative might look at that and go, "Oh, I gotta calm that down. I gotta make that a little darker because it's not going to expose right." So it calms it down to 18% gray, and then the rest of the scene goes practically pitch dark. So that's something to be aware of. That evaluative thought process, the way it evaluates the scene, tends to be a little overcompensating for bright elements in your scene. So it's always good to keep in mind and check your scene for any really bright elements and figure out if the camera's seeing that or not before you take your shots, because they can really ruin some photos. I mean, it happens. I've goofed them up many times myself. Partial basically says I'm going to take a meter reading and I'm going to average out against the entire scene. So it's just going to take overall reading, and then it's going to take a center weighted reading and say, okay, what do I have? What's my average? So it's kind of like evaluative, but it brings it back one step and only takes the two readings. Spot is exactly what we talked about before. A spot reading in a camera means that I'm going to take the very center of the camera, the very center of the lens, and read the reflective light at that point, whatever you're aiming at. So this way, if you say you got some white fluffy clouds in the sky and they're all up here, and you take your camera and you point up and you do a spot meter at the bottom side of the dark clouds, it's going to make that 18% gray. All your white clouds are going to go really white. It's going to go completely overexposed. It's going to be horrible. If you point it at the white clouds, it's going to tone the white down a little bit and make it 18% gray, thus making the whites not so white, but the dark's a little darker. So it's kind of a trade-off. So where do you actually meter read with a spot meter? You find something as close to 18% gray as you can. And if you can't find anything 18% gray, there's always what we call the Sky Brothers, which is a north sky. Anytime during the day, except for like 11 to 1, 11 to 2, high noon, Anytime the sun's not in that position, you can point your camera directly to the north to clear blue sky. You do that, and that is approximately 18% gray, and will give you a close enough meter reading to be able to expose your scene off of. So that's a great little tip too. Kind of write that one down. If I can't get a good reading and I'm having a really hard time with getting a reading for a scene, especially if you're out shooting like vistas, widespread vistas, you could always do a spot meter of or even evaluative meter of nothing but blue sky in the north. Okay, so you aim north just above the tree line, so all you see in the viewfinder is blue. Take the reading. Those are your settings for everything else in the scene. Merry Christmas. There you go. You're done. So the last one is center weighted average. Now this is where it gets kind of weird, because it's going to take kind of a spot meter and kind of make a fuzzy circle around it, and that's your center weighted average, and that's going to take just what you're aiming at, but it's going to average it out according to that area. So it gets a little funky with the math. A lot of people like this one because they tend to be like huntsmen. Like when they're hunting with a gun, they pull up and they aim right for the face, right for the heart, right for whatever, and they're aiming at a target. So a lot of people shoot cameras that way as well. They pull up, put the subject dead center in the crosshairs, and then that's what they're metering off of. Center weighted works great for that. Not very good when you want to recompose and try to get some weird scene where you might have some white and darks and light and darks and different things happening. So those are your camera meter readings and how you can change how the camera thinks. We saw the mechanical light meter, and we saw I didn't get to that one yet. There's the digital light meter with the spot meter and the incident reader and the reflective meter. So really, to use a meter, an external, I gotta find it here. There we go. So really, to use an external light meter, it's really simple. You set your ISO. You can set your shutter too, and then it'll only tell you your aperture, or you could let it do auto and you just set your ISO. You can set a lot of different things and get a different setting for whatever you're really looking for. So you set it, then you put it wherever you want to put it. If you're taking an incident reading, you put it near your subject or approximately the same lighting that your subject's getting. So you could be sitting at the camera, your subject be out in the same field that you're in, and you could just take the meter reading off of your face. Just as long as you meter read according to whichever way you face the dome, the same way the subject's facing, and then you get your meter reading. And that's how you take an incident reading. Now, reflective, you would point the dome at your scene and then pull the trigger, and that's reflective meter reading. So that's how you would use a handheld a bit. Another neat trick to use, and a lot of photographers like this, and I've tend to found that I do carry around a gray bag or a gray something that I can always use. But if you got like an 18% gray something, and you put like here, I'm showing you on screen, I've got some cards, and they're white cards and gray cards. And what this can do is you can throw these in the scene, someplace where the light is hitting it that you're seeing in the scene, and then meter off of those cards, pull those cards out, and use those same settings, and you'll get a perfect, well, close to perfect exposure. At least it gives you a reference point. And a lot of portrait photographers will have you hold one of these cards at first, take a couple flash shots, and see how the flash is reacting to the scene and how the camera's metering for the scene, and go, oh, okay, I'm pretty good here. And then they take those settings, and then give the card back, and then you pose for your portrait, and they got the settings, so now they can actually expose for you. So gray cards, it's always neat. You can make your own. You can take a piece of cardboard, paint it a light gray, so 20% gray or 18% gray. You could take and print off on your printer. Go into Photoshop and make a sheet of paper that's 18% gray. Cut it out and then glue that on the front of a piece of cardboard. Or you can go buy some really professional plastic cards from B&H Photo Video, Adorama, or down to the Village Camera Shop. And you can take those with you and put those in your camera bag if you're really having a hard time metering properly. This also helps with white balancing. Another show, another topic, but white balancing can be corrected as well with gray cards. Then I have a few examples. Well, I got a couple examples before we get into Photoshop here. Here's a picture on the left was the before. Here's the after where it should have been or close to where it should have been. This was a picture of our favorite little cat, one of our favorite little cats, our favorite little kitty, Oscar. And Oscar was sleeping on the bed, and I snuck up on him with the camera, and I just had to hurry up and shoot and see what I got. Now, the bedspread or comforter or whatever you want to call it is white. I mean, it is white. The camera saw it as 18% gray. Oscar's mouth area is white. The light that was hitting him was white. The camera saw all this white and thought it needed to be 18% gray. So you see on the left, it's muddy. It's a different color. It's not the right exposure. It's just not right. So correcting that, now just taking it into Photoshop and correcting it and telling it to up the exposure by 1, 2, or 3 stops, I had to do one whole stop here, and this is what I got. His feet now were white. The contrast got a little out of control, but still, his feet were white. The bedspread was white, and he looked properly exposed at that point. So there's a great example of how the camera can get tricked into doing something that you really didn't want it to do. All you cell phone people and iPad people, you're probably having a hard time with this. A lot of times when you're looking at something that's white, you're out shooting, maybe you go and you're traveling along and you're in a snowy scene and you take a photo, you take it home and you're like, wow, this is gray, it's muddy, it's yucky, what's wrong with this? That's what happens because the camera thinks it's 18% gray. And that rule applies for every camera out there. As far as I know, I don't know of any cameras that aren't that way. It's the basic principles of light metering. So, you know, it can get tricked. If you have something really dark, saying if we zoomed in on Oscar a little bit there and only wanted to get his front and back paw or maybe his tail because his tail was curled up and it looked kind of neat. His tail's pretty dark. It's kind of a brownish black ring kind of thing. So, you know, if you zoomed in there and you didn't have all this extra white there, you know, the comforter, and you were just in on the tail, it would have been really dark and the meter would have read it as 18% gray, which then would have brought everything up way too bright. So his tail, instead of looking blackish and dark brown, would turn it into this kind of mid-tone gray and mid-tone, whatever color brown is in a mid-tone. A lighter color, lighter like tan. So it'd be tan and grayish, a mid-tone gray. It just wouldn't be right. So, but that's some of the pitfalls of meter reading and trying to find your exposure. I think I got one more example here, which is Jakey. Yep, I did a split on Jakey here. My favorite companion cat that's always on my computer writing articles for somebody someplace. Here on the left, the camera took the meter reading and meter read. Oh, I guess you can't see it in the shot. A little bit further down next to his paws, the bedspread's right there, and it was really bright in one area. There was a doppel of light that was there, and it meter read that doppel of light more than it read the entire exposure, and thus gave us this really dark photo of Jakey. So I took it over into Photoshop, and I said, okay, I'm 2 stops away from where I want to be. And I kind of went up 2 stops. Now my comforter's white. Now his whiskers are white. He looks the right color. He looks properly exposed. He's not that dark color on the left. He's more a little bit lighter. So that's the whole trick behind meter reading, is knowing what your camera's looking at and knowing how to troubleshoot a photo. This goes for iPad, iPhones, Androids. I don't care what type of picture taking device. Film. You could do this with film. Well, it's definitely in film. And that's the whole thing is getting from point A to point B, to be able to take and look at your shot after you take it and go, I don't like this, and why don't I like this? Oh, I see. The camera was reading the background. Oh, the camera was reading this. And the more you ask that question, the better off you get, because all of a sudden things start clicking and you're like, oh, snow scene. Okay, I got to remember to either do an exposure compensation of 1.5 to the positive. I want to make it a 1.5 stops brighter. Or I got to find something in the scene that's supposed to be gray, that 18% gray, and not white. And then you meter off of that, or you bring a handheld meter and go, okay, click, that's the light. Okay, that's telling me these settings, set up my camera to those settings and go. So it really gets interesting to see what the camera thinks is what the camera thinks it should meter off of. So, how do you meter some different scenes? So, moving right along here, trying here. How do you meter some different scenes? Let's take a basic portrait per se. I think I got. Do I got one? That's Jakey. That's Oscar. Okay, we'll talk about that again. So, you're gonna get ready to shoot my portrait, and I look debonaering. I'm ready for my portrait, my close-up, Mr. DeVille. And you're pulling up the camera and you meter read off of me, and notice I have my dark circles in my eyes and under my chin because there's no light coming from below, it's all coming from above. And you meter read off my forehead, and the camera thinks my forehead's 18% gray, so it's going to make the whole scene darker. So now my dark circles are more predominant and makes it look worse than what I really wanted to do. So now, as you're trying to take that portrait, you can go take and grab one of these gray cards, have me hold it up in front of my face, and you take a test shot, and you read that meter off of the test shot with the 18% gray meter, and I cover up my hot spot here, so it's covering, my face, and you read off that 18% gray. You get the settings, then you set your camera, I put the card down, and I get in my, debonair pose, and I'm like, hey, take my shot, please, before I break something from holding this position. And you take the shot with those settings. Now all of a sudden, the scene, the portrait looks, one, bright, it's exposed properly, and two, you probably don't have as much dark circles. You don't have this really oddball, it's way too dark or way too light, depending on what you're taking. So that's how you would take a portrait. That's a great way. If you can't get a gray card, take the meter reading off their clothing. If their clothing is about that middle tone, 18% gray, even if it's green, just look at the tonal value. You can meter read off of a nice shirt and get an idea where you need to be. What do I got underneath this? Oh, I'm white. So I got my white shirt underneath this. Okay. So if you meter read off of this, everything's going to be darker. You meter read off of my green shirt, it might be a little bit too light. But you can at least have starting points and get an idea where you want to be. Saying your meter, maybe you're taking a shot of a vista, or maybe you're taking a shot of a waterfall. You're going to look up in that scene, and you're going to look and see what you can find in that scene and point to it with your camera, with your light meter, if you got a spot meter. And you're going to look at it and try to figure out what's 18% gray and try to get the setting for that particular item. Once you figure out the setting, the shutter speed and aperture for that particular item, all of a sudden, you're going to set that, you're going to fire it away, and it's going to look good. It's going to come out of the camera looking good. Instead of having to take it into Photoshop and work on it, it's going to be like, hey, I like it just the way it is. Same concept goes, I don't care if you got an iPad, an iPhone, or Android, or whatever. I think everybody should have a light meter if you're going to be out shooting photos that you're really are looking to keep. If you're just kind of out as an enthusiast shooting away, good luck, best of luck to you, because the problem with those phones and those smaller devices is it's all evaluative, so it's going to look at the whole scene. So you can't get the spot metering in, you can't get the center weighted metering in. So it's kind of fire and hope. You can always buy a little tiny spot meter, $100, and go have it with you. Then you can meter off that and tell your iPad what the settings is you want to use and give it a shot. It's very possible to get some very good pictures with phones and iPads and Androids and oh my, tigers and bears and lions, oh my. Yes. So there you go. What else then? Okay. What other scenes? I mean, you could take macro scenes. Any scene, whatever the camera scene is reflective metering, So you could try to spot meter in a macro setting. So saying if you got that dime in front of you and your macro, you're right on top of it and you're doing the macro shot to blow it up nice and big, maybe right under the nose of the president there, it's going to be an 18% gray that you can meter off of and get the perfect exposure, and that'll help you out. It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe you're doing a blushing bride. Maybe she's just sitting there and she's just like da 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 da, and kind of got her hands out and she's just like stop, in the name of love, and then you could then meter off of her dress and then tone it down or tone it up a little bit with the exposure compensation. So there's a lot of ways to do the different scenes, but you're always looking to come back to 18% gray. And that's the fun thing. What are some things that are in the real world that are 18% gray but aren't gray? These are great things that you can meter off of wherever you're at. Okay, so number one, Mr. Green Jeans. I love this. I forget what book it's in, but there's a book that always calls it Mr. Green Jeans, and I can't remember if it was The Joy of Photography or one of the other books, but he always called it Mr. Green Jeans. And what this is you literally point your camera at the foliage and fill the camera scene with foliage, what it's seeing, meter off of that, and that's going to give you a pretty close base meter reading to get your starting exposure. So you can get a good starting point. Then you have to tone it up or tone it down. I think it's tone it up by 1.5 stops. So you're going to cook it just a little bit more. You're going to brighten it up just a touch more because that's a little too dark. You want them to go to the dark side and everything else to go lighter. So you're going to exposure compensation up by 1 3/4 stop, 1.5 stop, 1 2/3 stop, somewhere in there. So you can meter off of green leaves out in wherever to get a base meter reading and start a starting point, and then work your way through it. The other thing is the sky. We talked about the north sky. If you got beautiful blue skies in the north, and you can just fill the whole frame in your camera with blue skies, you can get a good reading of what the incident light is, because that's going to be about 18% gray. Any other color that is close to gray. If you can find a kitty cat that's close to gray, because Oscar's finally decided to come over and say hi. Hi, Oscar. How are you doing? Coming up? Come on, if you're coming up. But 18% gray. If you could find anything in this world that's 18% gray, whether it's something man-made, not man-made, mud. You can find a tone of mud that's 18% gray. You can meter what the light is in your scene. So keep that in mind. Always think in that tone value. That's what you're trying to get to. Internal versus external meters. I think we kind of covered that just a little bit. I'll cover it just real quick again, just a little bit. Internal meters are always inside the camera. Usually has some evaluative purposes, but it's stuck inside the camera. You can only do reflective metering. External cameras allow you to do incident readings as well as reflective readings. And a lot of times, if you get a decent meter, you can do spot reflective readings right inside the meter itself and get your settings real quick. Spot metering, once again, is it's like a telescope, and you're only going to get a little tiny, very, very small point that it's going to meter off of. So that way you can look and you see your scene and you see that perfect gray cloud to meter your skyscape. And you aim it up there and you put it right on that cloud, pull the trigger, and that gives you your settings for that cloudscape. And it's perfect. It comes right out. Well, I always keep saying perfect, but it's going to be exposed fairly well. And that's where it's going to get. So that's light meters. That's light metering. I can go into it for probably 2 or 3 hours if you wanted me to, and really slow down a bit and go over each thing and how to do it in each scene. Might do a little bit more of that in future shows, but really that is the basics. That's everything about light metering. So you got a base knowledge of it. Now you can go out and look and see what you want to do and how to get better shots, and maybe get some other tips as well. So we're at 7:40. I got 10 minutes to do a little bit in Photoshop. Everybody seems to love Photoshop. I like Photoshop. I like doing stuff in Photoshop, so why don't we do a little fixer-uppers for some photos here. So here, this was shot at a wedding I recently did. This is, I'm always big on doing still art for weddings. That way the bride and groom have something really nice to, you know, oh my God, those are my rings. Oh my God, that's my necklace. Oh, that's my sandals that I wore. Oh, this is great. Very great for memory jogging. Pardon me. So, you know, this is really great. Still art for doing weddings. Still art is always a fun thing to do because you can take things and blend them all together. Take some favors and the bride's shoes and one of the shoes of the groom, and maybe the borrowed blue, something borrowed, something blue, something. What was the other thing? Something. I hope it wasn't something big. I don't think it's something big, something borrowed, something blue. Oh man, I'm having a horrible memory day today. The 3 Bs. So, you know, you could take these and put them all in a scene and do something nice like this. So, what I don't like about this is the color's off just ever so slightly here. I've got these wonderful specular highlights I think I want to accent. Maybe put some crosshatch highlights in. And I really want to get these silvers to be silver and not so much this brown color. So let's go right over into Photoshop and let's do some color correction first. We'll do that with levels. So we're going to go hit the adjustment level and we're going to go to levels. And I'm going to pick my gray dropper here right on the side. I'll hit it again here. So you see it. And I'm going to go find something that's supposed to be 18% gray, someplace in here. Okay, now we're really kind of a bluish white. Let's come back and maybe hit something a little more. Maybe get a little bit more neutral. Oh, I don't know where I want to be. Well, I guess that's pretty close to what it really was. It was white and diamonds. It wasn't brown. Now I'm going to set my highlights. What's the hottest thing I want? Probably these diamonds. Oh, look, and it auto-corrected back to brown. That's great. And then I'm going to, I think the darkest point is the shadow down here. Yes. Okay, so now I got my contrast. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the color correction like I wanted to. And I'm going to try that white diamond there. No, that's not it. I really want it to be a little bit cooler, but I don't want it this cool. Let's see. Find another spot and another spot. And hi, Oscar. How are you? So... let's see, try, oh, that's not it. Try one more time here. There we go. That's a little better. That's about where I wanted it. So it's really neutral. The silvers look silver. The white looks white. It almost has a monochrome look to it. Now we can brighten the whole scene by moving the slider in the middle, brighten up the midtones, darken up the midtones. Both ways look kind of neat. You know, so, I mean, I don't know which way we'd want to go. I don't know. It's a wedding, so... maybe we want to be a little bit lighter, brighter, happier. Shiny, happy people holding hands. Right? Oh, let's see. Yeah, let's go with that. All right, so there we go. We got that. Let's go find our special brush here that does the glints for us. Oh, I'm still in the adjustment layer. Hang on. We got to get a new layer. So we're going to put a new layer in our layer menu here. And we're going to take and do a paintbrush, and we're going to find that glint brush. And I got it, whoops. Edit undo. Let's see, let's do a brush. Let's see if I can find the glint brush very quickly. It's not loaded. So let's try this again here. Let's try basic brushes, okay. It didn't change. Where is it here? Effects brushes, natural brushes. Wow, I can't remember where it is. That's pretty bad. Those are natural brushes. None of them are the glints. Sorted brushes. Let's try that. Maybe that's it. Glints. I know you're here, glints. There we go, glints right here. So we got a 50 glint right here. So we take the 50 glint and we make it a little bit bigger by bringing our brush size up. And we want to make sure it's white. And it's a white glint. And we're going to hit here just ever so slightly, a couple clicks. Maybe go back into the brush palette here and rotate it ever so slightly in the crosshair here. So if you see I'm rotating my brush, and in the video you'll see it's moving. So we'll rotate it a little bit so it's not the same glint that I'm putting down someplace else. So maybe shrink this up a little bit to do the glint on the ring here. And we're going to sparkle this up just a little bit, do a couple glints here and there. And then, let's see, get a smaller one. Whoops. Get a smaller one here. So let's save that. There we go. We got our glints. Save as. Yes, yes. Save. Okay. Let's see what else we got. Do we got any? Yeah, we'll do a couple more glints out here. And all this is just taking the brush a couple times in the same spot over a bright highlight. And, you know, basically just clicking a few times. Just to, I mean, it kind of makes the photo look neat, you know? So it's kind of a neat technique. So, you know, so you can kind of do the glints and make it kind of look pretty. What else do I want to do to this? There must be something I want to do to this. No, I liked it. You know, I really liked the shot right out of the camera, so it wasn't really that bad to play with. But so I'm just kind of like looking at it going, you know what? I think I'm done with this. I really do. I think I'm done with it. Maybe sharpening it. Yeah, let's sharpen it. So let's go Control-Alt-Shift-E to make a clone stamp brush of that. So it's a clone layer of that. So right there, layer 2 now is a clone. We're going to do the high pass filter. So we're going to do that sharpening technique. So to do that, you go to Filter, Other, High Pass, and we're going to increase the pixel radius until we get the details that we want to be sharpened, but not the noise. So right about probably a little much. Yeah, about 4.5, 4.7, someplace in there. Now, the only thing you got to do is to take this grayscale and turn it into a sharpening layer is to change the blend mode from normal to soft light. So there you go. Now the picture looks beautiful. Got our glints in there. Now let's take the sharpening off. Let's put the sharpening back on. Sharpening off. You might not be able to see it too well with the... Yeah, I think you can see it in the video. All right, so there we go. We have our final product. Let's hit save. Go back to our original. So here's our original. A little bit on the reddish side, brownish side. No glints, kind of looks nice, but could use a little bit of work. And here's our finished product. Should have been our finished product. What happened to it? File, save as. I must have saved it wrong. Pardon me for 1 second. JPEG. And I'm in the wrong place anyhow, so go images. Yeah, show images. There we go. New. Beautiful. Okay. Okay. So here's our original and here's our new. So let's go back to the original one more time. A little bit on the red side, no glints. It's not as sharp as I'd like it to be. And the color tone's off. We corrected the color tone, corrected the exposure, and put some glints in to give it a little bit of sparkly, and here's the new. I think I put too many glints in. I think I did. Too many glints. But it's okay. I can go back to my file and take those glints out because I saved them as a layer. So it's its own layer there. You know, complete by itself, so I can just take the whole layer out and start over. So that's the beauty of working in layers in Photoshop, is as long as you keep it in layers and you keep doing layers, it does a great job of remembering what you're doing so that you don't have to, you know, worry about, you know, if you do too much, take that layer out or delete that layer or start a new layer and do it again. So there's lots and lots of ways to keep moving forward with a photo, as long as you don't do destructive edits, you know, like hitting the erase button or working on the same layer as... Oh, there we go. Hey, we found a cat. That's great. Hi, Oscar. What are you doing? In the middle of the show, no less. So that's pretty much it for this week's show. Let's get back to me and Oscar. I'll show you guys Oscar so you know that I'm not lying. There's Oscar the kitty. And... so that's this week's show. You got to see some stuff in Photoshop. You learned all about light meters and light metering and how cameras work for light metering. It's been a really fun show. I've really enjoyed it, and Oscar's been being a pest and enjoying it too, I guess. So from all of us to all of you, hope you tune in. Go check out our website at tdbny.com. Check us out on fingerlakes1.com or fingerlakes1.tv. Make sure to check out YouTube or check out our Facebook page. Like us, share us. We need the help for sharing. If you don't share us, nobody else gets to see us. So please help us out by clicking like and share. And that's this week's show. So as I say every week, I will catch you on the flip side.
A Flipside Studio production. It's the Digital Babble. Tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on fingerlakes1.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter.